Okay, so I know I'm probably a little bit late to the party on this one, but Moon Knight was pretty good. Like, I had zero expectations when I first heard about the series being announced because my biggest experience with Moon Knight was the fact that he was in Ultimate Alliance, but apparently he's in very specific versions of Ultimate Alliance, like the Wii version has him, but the PS2 version doesn't have him. And then I think the Xbox 360 version had him. Me and my roommate decided to play through all the games again, and we've had a realization that there was like tons of really random character exclusives per platform. That's not the point of this video. I don't know where this is a side tangent. But Moon Knight was pretty good. Like, I got more hype as the series was coming up because the fact that one of my coworkers, Kevin, not to be confused with my coworker Kevin, this is other Kevin. They both like video games and Marvel, but one of them I've played video games with and see more often, and then the other's a little older and I haven't as much. But that Kevin, we were working together once and the series was getting a lot of hype, so he decided to talk about it, and he was telling me all about the character and how interesting it was. Like, I didn't even know Moon Knight had multiple personalities, so he was telling me about that. He was showing me the behind the scenes videos of Oscar Isaac training for fight scenes and stuff, and admittedly I got pretty hyped for it. Like, this was probably my most anticipated Marvel show since Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I guess. But my main issue since Moon Knight came out, because I remember the first episode came out and it was everything I wanted, and it explored the concepts really cool and like built this mystery, and it had a unique direction, and I was really happy. But sadly, it is a Disney Plus Marvel show. A big issue that's been coming up with a lot of these Disney Plus Marvel shows is that the quality usually starts out extremely high on episode 1 and then kind of does that whole thing, that shape. Like, in Moon Knight is no different. The first 2 episodes I think are great. The last 2 episodes I think are great, but episodes 3 and 4 I think are a huge lull in the series, and sadly it's not the only series to have this issue. WandaVision I liked a ton starting out. I loved the mystery and making use of sitcom tropes from throughout the years. Like, the concept was really cool, and half of the fun for me was examining everything happening and trying to theorize what would end up being the truth, what's actually going on. But then like halfway through the show they just kind of reveal everything, and then they start bringing in these side characters that could be interesting, but they aren't really given depth or time to become interesting, taking the focus away from the really interesting mystery and sitcom elements, which were the best part of the show. So the whole second half of WandaVision, I feel like it's just huge drop over the first half, and it sucks because it was really interesting and good, and I still wouldn't say the show is bad, but it's just like, could have been better. And I can say the same for most of the Marvel Disney Plus shows. I think the only one that's been the most consistent is probably Loki, and then Falcon and the Winter Soldier is really close, because I still think there are some lulls every now and then. Like, I thought the first episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier was awesome, but then there was like 1 or 2 episodes in there that were kind of slower and didn't have as much going on, or was kind of just like taking steps to reach an end goal kind of thing. But the steps weren't that interesting, if you get what I mean. Because obviously most stories have a beginning and end goal, but it sucks. Because it's like, I can't say any of the shows are straight up bad, but I can't say any of them are so good that I would love to say it's my favorite show. Which sucks, because before, I remember we had Marvel movies like Captain America Civil War, where I would genuinely just say that was a great movie on its own because it was so well done, and pacing was great, and it felt like it really said something and had a great message and had great direction, all this stuff. Great. And then now we're getting these shows that have the budget of these movies and have more episodes and time to add extra depth to these characters and explore more stories, and it feels like they don't know what to do with that time. Like, they're just getting all this extra time and they don't know how to do anything with it. So that brings us to Moon Knight. I think it's a good show. And I think in some ways it explored its ideas really well, but I think in other ways, just like with a lot of the other shows, it drops the ball and doesn't stay consistently awesome throughout. Like, other than the lull in episodes 3 and 4, there's also just kind of some weird issues every once in a while I want to talk about that kind of just bring the show down for me, because I think the show has some huge highs, some stuff that I love to rewatch. I would just rewatch clips of it because they were done so well and are so cool to me. But for every clip like that, there's also a clip where I could say, wasn't that really clunky and weird as shit? Like, why was that in the finished product? My tier list right now, in terms of the Marvel Disney Plus shows, is probably Loki, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, then Moon Knight, and then from there, Hawkeye, WandaVision, something like that. And the only reason, originally I was thinking I was going to put Moon Knight either on par with Loki or right below it, but it got dropped again because, for me at least, consistency matters a ton, because it's really easy to recommend something that's consistently good even if it doesn't necessarily reach the same highs as Moon Knight. Like, I don't think Falcon and the Winter Soldier reaches the highs of Moon Knight's highs, but it's a consistently good show where it doesn't have humongous drops in quality at random. Well, I feel like Moon Knight does. So, and for me, consistency matters a lot. So that's the only reason I'd put it below Falcon, sadly. But we're going to talk about why. We're going to pick out the examples, things that bothered me, things that I have rewatched the show entirely with my parents, as we have for every show. And it's kind of nice because then I get a chance to rewatch it, not have the expectations I had watching it the first time. Because, for instance, in episodes 3 and 4, when Moon Knight loses his suit at the end of episode 3, that sucked. When I had expectations of cool fight scenes and more Moon Knight, and then I got 2 episodes of no Moon Knight at all. But then returning to it afterwards, knowing that that was going to happen, I could appreciate some things a little more and different choices and how good the episode was, taking it as it was. And also gave me the chance to reassure myself that I wasn't crazy and that some of these awkward scenes are just really awkward. Okay, so we're getting out the notebook. I have my notes here, and we're going to talk about the scenes that suck. And some good stuff too, but mainly we're going to be focusing on the scenes that suck. Should have had this on the page. Sadly, my issues are in episode 1, 2. So, but not like episode 1, 2, TOL. Episode 1 is probably my personal favorite episode of the show, which seems to be the reoccurring theme for most of like the Disney Plus Marvel shows, because I think the first episode of WandaVision was really good at building the mystery. I think Falcon and Winter Soldier's first episode was really awesome in setting up really cool camera angles and seeing where these characters are after the events of the movies and stuff, and making like the therapy scene where we kind of get cuts between what he's been actually doing and what he's telling his therapist. That was so cool. And then after that, I think we got less cool shots as it went on, and so it's kind of like they throw everything at the wall, do the coolest, most unique stuff in episode 1, and then they kind of fall back in their formula by the end, which sucks, but I don't think that's much different here. Moon Knight definitely has scenes that live up to the highs of episode 1, but I think episode 1 stays my favorite because of the fact that it had the most unique ideas of, okay, how do we show this mystery to this audience? How do we build up the fact that he has 2 personalities and what it would be like to be one of the personalities not knowing about the other one? Like, they show us tons of different evidence of him trying to figure out why he keeps blacking out, what he's doing sleepwalking, like all this stuff. And it keeps piling on until the big reveal at the end of the episode where we finally get to see Moon Knight and this other personality, and just perfect scene. Not a perfect episode though, sadly. I still have my complaints. They're pretty minor, all things considered, but the first one is there's a scene on the bus where our villain Arthur appears on the bus. Like, he just got off it, the bus goes by, and Arthur's on the bus. Is he being stalked? He's real. Oh my god, these are the thoughts that you are having as a viewer. And then there's this really weird dubbed over line, or at least I'm like 100% confident it's dubbed over, where our protagonist Steven, he is just like, oh my god, he's real. And like you can tell that he's not actually saying that. And also it just makes me feel stupid as a viewer. It feels like they did like a test screening of the show and people were like, who's that guy? I already forgot who he was, even though we saw him literally like 10 seconds ago. And so they were like, oh, I guess we better add in this dubbed over line that explains to the viewer, oh, this is that guy from before. Like what? And also there's tons of other stuff in episode 1, like reflections not moving and things like that that hint at a greater mystery that the audience can miss. And I missed some of it and saw it on my second rewatch. This could have just been another thing. Like it wasn't that important to explain this because in the next scene he comes into his work anyway, so the character still gets introduced as being there. And it's just awkward. It's so weird and gross. Blah. And speaking of that scene right afterwards, so he comes into his work, he interrogates him, where's the scarab, checks his scales, and then like he's like very surprised by the scales that he gets, and then Steven runs away and he lets him leave. And then it abruptly cuts to Steven just casually working. Like, I get the idea could be that, like, Steven is such, like, a shy dude, and he kind of just takes what happens to him, that he didn't freak out that much about it and just went back to work, even in this crazy situation where he just learned that several of his security guard coworkers are part of this, like, cult. But I feel like there should have just been a reaction or something. Like, they could have had him still be working, and, like, he just goes, man, this is crazy, what's happening, or something. But no, he's just very normal. He's just doing his job, just chilling, doesn't seem bothered at all. And luckily, that's the only issues I have with 1, because the rest of it's just really cool mystery building. Love it. I think episode 2 is super good. I really like the fact that we get to see villain motivations and ones that actually are like really interesting. This idea of what if you could unlock the power to kill people that were going to commit really bad things. Because if you thought that that was accurate and like it would be only killing bad people, I could see why you would end up doing this, because you think you're helping the world. But then on the other hand, Steven has a really good point that like, how do you know for sure that these people are actually going to be evil? And also you are not even giving them the chance to maybe go to a different path. You're killing kids because they might be evil someday, which then you could kind of counteract that with, well, if we had the chance to kill Hitler as a kid, would we have? But and that's like a really interesting debate, and I like the fact that that is explored. The only thing I could maybe complain about is like the fact that they take it a step further, because rather than having a show where maybe the audience could actually be on the side of the villain and be like, that is an interesting perspective, I might be in his shoes in this situation, they like make him just start killing random people. And like there was this one guy who just happened to see the scarab and he kills him because he saw the scarab, I guess, because then that makes him a little more evil, so now you can't really side with him because he's also kind of crazy and just killing random people. Like, I think it would have been a kind of cooler idea to just have him have a good point. And maybe even the audience agrees with him, but he's the villain in the protagonist's eyes, so he's still the villain, and that would be okay. And it would be cool to be able to have that talk and debate. And another thing I really like about episode 2 is when Moon Knight shows up. And you have that scene where he's running across the rooftops and he jumps and the moon's in the background, like the shots and the way that Moon Knight himself is executed is really cool. Top tier scenes. It's raining now. We've had a mood shift, which I think is a perfect time to get into episode 3. Episode 3, I think, is where things fall off a lot. Like, it's kind of a thing where overall it's still a good show, and even this episode I can't say is like straight up bad, but it's just very mediocre when compared to the rest of the series and the highs that it's hit before. And one scene in particular really just kicks me right in the shins, if you know what I'm saying. So there's already kind of things I can complain about, like early on in the episode, the fight scenes are pretty choppy. Like there's some cool choreography and moments in them that I liked. Like I like the fact that this guy's showing off the cool knife and then he just decks him right in the face. Stuff like that I appreciate. Kind of goes against the norm, but for everything like that, there was still like a lot of like cut, like hiding stuff, and it's like, I thought he did all this training for choreography, but they didn't really show much of that off in this episode. And then, but my biggest offender, the worst scene has to be, we have a setup. Here we go. So they're trying to be undercover. They're just showing interest in this artifact that is going to give them a clue to where the tomb of the god that I remember the name of. So they're undercover. And then he's trying to solve the puzzle so that he can get the location of the tomb. And I'm really hoping it was a tomb and that there isn't like a better name for it. There probably was. But as with most of these things usually go, they get found out. They get guns aimed at them and they're like trapped in this terrible situation. Arthur comes in and he's like, whatever they're offering you, I can offer you something better. And then I believe you might say I should rewatch this scene if I'm going to describe it, but I think it's better if I get it wrong. It's Arthur starts using his staff a little bit and it explodes the tomb, and then that distracts the guards for a sec, which I can buy that. Whatever. Distracts the guards so that they can beat them up even though they had guns aimed at them and get out of this crazy situation. That's been done a million times. I can believe it, whatever, it would be fine. But then they take it a step further, and the whole time, like, he's like being told to summon the suit, things have gone bad, just pull out the suit, take everyone out. So he finally does. And you know how he does it? We cut away to this distraction. This has been done before in tons of TV shows and movies, but normally what you try to do is you try to cut away for a believable amount of time, so that way when you cut back, he's gone. That can be done if you give it a believable amount of time, but we literally cut away for like 2 seconds. We cut back, he's completely gone, which already just feels really weirdly edited and disjointed, because how did he get away that quickly? Like, I guess maybe the suit makes him really fast. I've seen a little bit of that when we were, like, when he's wearing the suit, so I guess maybe, but it feels awkward and weird. But not only that, but Layla's down there. She's also in danger. They all have guns. You think the first thing he would do as soon as he puts the suit on is he fights them all off, gets her to safety, whatever. No. They're like, where is he? And he's on top of the pyramid. He literally, for no reason whatsoever, just because it's fucking cool looking, I guess, and he could do his cool ass pose, he disappears and then is just on top of the pyramid, and they have this cool character shot. And like, don't get me wrong, I'm assuming it was all set up because afterwards he jumps off and he shows off the moon cape and like how it's in the shape of a moon and everything, and it is a cool shot, but there could have been like a million other ways to set that up. It just feels really awkward and weird. Why would he climb on top of the pyramid just to jump right back down? Like, it literally was. And like, this episode almost recovers in that action scene because like when they're on the jousting grounds and there's some cool action happening and it's well choreographed, but then there's like this really awkward part, and I get what they're going for. They're trying to be like, Steven and Mark are not getting along, and they're kind of a hindrance to each other because one has very different motivations than the other. One believes in killing, one doesn't. So like, I kind of like the idea of them not working together well, because then by the end of the series, when they start working together well, it'll be like a really nice moment to get to see the evolution of that. But it makes zero sense that in this situation where you have several people who have big stabby sticks and guns trying to kill you, that you were going to take over and be like, nah guys, let's talk this out. Like, it just, again, it's like a good idea, but it feels really awkward and not super well executed. And then he loses his suit, which, as somebody who for the first time watching this has these expectations of these cool action scenes and getting to see more Moon Knight, to then take away the Moon Knight suit for like 2 episodes is pretty lame. And luckily, one of the episodes, episode 5, I think does a really good job and didn't need it. But episode 4 is definitely another low point, and one of the 2 episodes I think are the lowest points of the series because it just randomly becomes a whole different show where it's just about adventure solving and mystery, but it's not super good or well done like maybe Indiana Jones would be. Okay, so now episode 5, I think, is the best episode of the series, actually. And even though I said episode 1's my favorite, which I think it probably is, like, I still have, like, my issues or awkward things I can point out in the episode, but I think episode 5 is pretty much perfect. Like, it's consistent throughout the whole thing. There isn't any, like, weird editing issues. And to be fair, the end of episode 4 kind of sets up episode 5, and I think that is the best part of episode 4, but no, episode 5 I feel like is pretty perfect because it has an awesome idea, it has really unique camera angles and shots and editing and psychological, like, mindfuckery, and we got amazing acting from Oscar Isaac, and it all comes together perfectly, and I can't really, like, point out any huge flaws or things I didn't like in it. It's pretty much a perfect episode of the show, and is something that, like, you couldn't realistically do the same way if it wasn't Moon Knight and if it wasn't a unique Marvel property. Like, you couldn't probably do this with Spider-Man or Iron Man the same way. Like, we like diversity. I'm looking for uniqueness in all of these shows, so whenever I get my cool, crazy camera angles or interesting ideas, that's my favorite stuff. The mystery of WandaVision was the most interesting part of the show because it was different. It didn't just go back to the formula, and this episode I think is really good for that. I will say the ending is a little bit undermined by the fact that right in the next episode Steven gets brought back, but it's a minor thing. Like, I think it's worth it because the 2 personalities is what makes him interesting, so if you got rid of the 2 personalities, then we'd have a much less interesting show. And then there's episode 6, which I think is good, but clunky as hell, sadly. It feels like there's a lot to wrap up, and they don't always succeed in that. One thing they set up and end up doing is Layla becoming the avatar of Hippo Lady, as is her name. And, which I like that idea a lot, actually, because they do set her up as being just as competent as Mark was. And then Mark got the armor from becoming an avatar, and that's how he became a really powerful superhero. She could totally do the same thing, and she's doing it to help their solution. There's a reason behind it. They need more avatars to be able to lock away the god. Makes sense. Cool idea. But, like, that scene is really awkward because it's kind of cool to have this vision and see the really good acting of her taking over her body to talk to her, like talking to her through her own body, which is cool. But then it just kind of awkwardly has this scene where everything's collapsing around. Layla never brings that up to her, and then everything just collapses on her, and that's the end. Like, it's like, that could have been a good comedy bit, I guess, but it's like the way it's edited with everything else going on, like being so frantic and escalating, and then we just kind of cut to this, and it's like, what's happening? And then she just gets crushed, and then we cut away, and then she's just not crushed, and she's the avatar, and it's like, I don't know, it's just kind of awkward. It's hard to explain, but it feels weird. Arthur running down the pyramid is bad. It looks really bad. He's Rubber Man. It doesn't look very good. Like, I'll admit, the second time watching it, knowing that it was gonna happen, I looked at it and went, oh, I guess it's not that bad, but it is still bad. It's not good. But what this episode does have is easily the best choreography of the whole series, I think, because we get to see Steven with his 2 sticks beating the shit out of people in a one-shot and clearly showing some really good choreography. And then also we get to see the full circle I was talking about, where Mark and Steven are working together and just seamlessly switching and taking advantage of each other's strengths and their different kind of weapons and stuff, and just able to switch and fight effectively together. It feels like they're united and working well together. and it's very satisfying, and it's also just really cool, like the concept of somebody who is switching personalities on the fly and having an entirely different fighting style and then switching back. Like, it's cool, and I like that we got to see a ton of that, and it was well choreographed. Okay, but now now I have to complain in a way that I don't want to like come off wrong. So Layla became basically a superhero. She has a cool outfit. I like it. I like the shield wings. It's pretty neat. Kind of falcony, but that's fine. And then like she ends up saving this kid from a bus. And they kind of have that scene where it's like she's supposed to be inspiring to this kid, but I feel like you could have gotten that across to either by just having her rescue her and maybe playing some heroic music, or you might not even have to go that far. That might have been a little cheesy. But to especially like, they just home it in. Like she asks her like, are you an Egyptian superhero? And she's like, yes. And then there's this cool pose moment and everything. And it's like, it feels really cheesy. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I'm all for having more diversity in superheroes. Like, it's nothing like that, but it's really cheesy. Like, even if Spider-Man went up to a kid and he's like, yeah, I am a superhero, I would be like, bleh. Unless the point was that it was supposed to be cringe, because that is something that Peter Parker would do. And then I would enjoy it. I really like the way they hint at the third personality in this, like, because genuinely, like, he's losing really hard, and then, like, you're like, what the fuck is he gonna do to get out of this? And he actually does, because of the third personality just going ham. And I loved that scene. That's like really cool, because we've gotten hints over the whole series of that third personality, and to get to see them at their lowest point, not know how they're gonna get out of this, and then just that jarring, he did it. The third personality did it, and we didn't even get to see what he did. Like, I love this show's restraint. Like in the first episode, the fact that we didn't get to see most of the action scenes, but either the aftermaths or like just an interlude in it, because they were dedicated. Like, it probably made it easier to film because you don't have to choreograph as much stuff, but it also, they could have easily been like, whoa, cool action, but instead they were dedicated to having this experience of what would it be like to just have to lose time and just be on suddenly somewhere completely different, or have done a ton of things, be surrounded by bodies. Like, I love that they keep going to that instead of just showing what happens. They keep us directly in the perspective of, I just lost control of my body and lost time, and now suddenly I'm here. Like, I love that they kept going with that. Okay, but we have to complain. So even in this whole scene, Mark, like, they made the new deal with Khonshu, where they're like, okay, after this, we're done. You release us. That's our new terms of our deal. We'll help you with this. You release us. And like the whole kind of message, I can respect the message of Mark doesn't enjoy killing. It's just something he realized he was good at. And now that he was being controlled by Khonshu, he was just doing his killing for him, even though he doesn't like killing. And I can respect the idea of teaching him that, hey, you don't have to listen to Khonshu anymore. You got yourself out of this. You don't have to kill for him. Like, he may have saved your life, but you are your own person. You can stop killing. And, but I think the time to do that would have been earlier, and not on Arthur and a god that could literally wipe out millions and millions of people very easily, as they were doing, until you stop them. Like, I think it was really weird to just have it be that when he's in this situation where he's about to kill a god finally that like could kill millions of people, and this terrible guy who was leading this cult who was all working against you this whole time, and you've killed tons of people, and even in like the previous scene you killed several people, but then suddenly when you get up to this guy, it's like, nah, I'm not killing anymore. Do your own dirty work. Again, I like the idea, but the execution is a little weird, because it's like, okay, this is the one guy you should kill. This should be your final kill, and then after that you're like, okay, I'm not killing anymore. Like, I killed a really bad person, but now we're done. And then my final complaint is that the ending is a little confusing. Like, I think the scene where it goes back into like the psychiatric ward, it kind of makes sense. Like I've kind of made sense of it a little bit because it's like there was the actual where he was in the psychiatric ward that was the land of the dead. And then he was kind of switching between that and being in this office with Arthur where it seemed like maybe that was like his conscience or something, like talking to him and deciding whether or not he's crazy and all this stuff. But it was kind of confusing. Maybe I'm just stupid, which is entirely possible. But I did figure out like Deadly Premonition, and that ending is fucking whack. But I was able to like piece that together, even though that required some piecing together. And I was like, whoa, that's really cool. So maybe I just need to think about it more. But even after like watching it the second time, I was still pretty confused by the whole weird, we're gonna be superheroes thing. Like, was that just him kind of in his own brain deciding whether he's crazy or something? I don't know. And then the after credit scene was cool with the reveal of the third personality, Jake Lockley. Like, cool stuff. And if they decide to make a season 2, it'll be really cool to explore that. And that is all my notes.
I'm blind and afraid. The colors of the sound like shape.
So again, I think it's important to stress that I still really like this show because I think the personality stuff was really cool. The way that they incorporated the reflections, because the amount of different ways they did it, and I imagine the amount of time and effort it takes to set up a lot of these shots. I know they showed one off in Corridor Crew's VFX artist reacts, and there was one of the scenes that I didn't think would be that hard. But then once they explained it, I was like, oh shit, that would be really hard. And then I rewatched the show with my parents and I was like, damn, there's a ton of scenes that do very similar things to that, and that would be really hard to do. So like the fact that they did as many as they did and they were all done so well is awesome. The suit looked really good. The whole of episode 1 was just such a high, like all the creativity and cool ideas and things that I haven't really seen in movies or TV shows. Or the action scene in episode 2 where we finally get Moon Knight again towards the end of the episode. But like just so cool. And the shot of him jumping with the moon, like there's so many really cool ideas and shots that are executed awesomely, but the consistency is so all over the place. So I can't say it's like an amazing show. I can say it's good, and I can say I enjoyed it and I want a season 2. But it just sucks that I can't be super excited for any of the Marvel Disney Plus shows because I can't count on them to be consistently good. And even when I like an episode 1, because Moon Knight went the same way as the other shows where I go, whoa, episode 1's awesome, okay. Like, if it keeps up with this, it'll be great. And then it doesn't. Like, it kind of does, but then it drops off and then it goes back up. It's sad. Like, WandaVision was the same way. Most recently, I just watched the first episode of Ms. Marvel, and I kind of went in with low expectations because I wasn't like super interested, but it surprised the fuck out of me with how awesome the shots were and how well directed it was. And like, even though the story is just solid, like it's not anything necessarily special or like crazy unique that we haven't seen before, the way that it was directed and shot clearly has a ton of love and passion put into it, that it brought the source material and the writing way up, because presentation can make up the show a ton, even if your script is just solid and not necessarily something amazing. And so I think the first episode was great, but that it's sad that that doesn't necessarily make me excited for the rest of the show. Like, I'm pumped in a way where I'm like very hopeful, but I'm still scared that it's going to have the same issues that every other show has had, where it just can't keep up for 6 episodes. It seems like most of these ideas were set up for maybe like a movie, or that the people who were writing got too scared of the fact that it was only 6 episodes instead of something like 13, like Daredevil, where you got 13 hours to expand all these characters. So they just kind of didn't go for it. They didn't use their extra time super well, and then you get this weird kind of disjointed, varying quality show. And I'm wondering if part of it might be quarantine affect filming, and so There were things that they would have reshot but they didn't, or there was scenes that they would have shot in person that they couldn't, and just putting it together with only special effects was kind of awkward, and they just did the best they could. That wouldn't surprise me. Or like weird deadlines or rewrites that make things a little more awkward because you had to edit in things that weren't there originally, or you had to edit things out and kind of figure out how to connect these two. So I believe they probably did try their best for the most part, but I do think an issue might be that people watched it and it was too different, and so they had to keep trying to like make changes and be like, well, let's kind of move it back in the direction that we're comfortable with, that we know works, that will get people to watch it and grow a bigger audience. But the only thing I can hope, and hopefully this continues with Miss Marvel, She-Hulk, the effects are weird, but maybe they can do it too. It's just I'm looking for unique things. Like, we're at a point now where we've had so many superhero things that I totally get why tons and tons of people are feeling so burnt out on the genre and just hate all superhero stuff right now, because a lot of it has been the same kind of structure and story told over and over again. But I think the easy solution to that is there are so many different characters and worlds and creative ideas in comics. Just explore those. Things like The Boys and Invincible are seen so fondly because they have such a creative and weird and different take on the superhero genre, and they stick to it and they don't go back to their old formula halfway through and kind of take away a lot of that uniqueness. So if Marvel can just play into the uniqueness, they can make great shows. And again, none of these were necessarily bad. I think some are definitely better than others, and I think they're all good. But I want great. I want another Daredevil, which they're going to make, and I'm terrified of. That is the scariest thing, which sucks because I wanted a season 4 for so long. And now that I'm getting one, I'm more concerned than excited. Embrace unique ideas and director visions, and you'll get an audience, a very passionate audience. Most of the biggest franchises started with somebody who had a unique idea and got to put all their creativity and unique ideas into something. Movies like Star Wars, Back to the Future, and including Iron Man were all pretty unique for their time. And then just let people do unique stuff. Embrace how different these characters can be, and embrace director visions and cool shots. Because even if your writing is mediocre as hell, if you can make the show incredibly visually interesting to watch because of cool shots like Miss Marvel, it'll still be great. So just embrace that. Don't keep going to your comfortable ideas, please. And hopefully there will be a Moon Knight season 2, or maybe he'll be in a movie or something, and we'll get a more consistently good show. Please. Thanks.